Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Dimerix's special investor briefing. My name is Jane Lowe, and I'll be your host for today's session. Well, we're here to discuss the news this morning that Dimerix has acquired a new asset, DMX-652, in acute kidney injury. We'll be learning about an important area of unmet need and also a major opportunity for Dimerix to showcase its kidney disease expertise. The company also announced today funding to support this pipeline expansion and also support the completion of the ACTION3 Phase 3 study for DMX-200. Joining me this morning is Dr. Nina Webster, Dimerix's Managing Director and CEO. I'll start by saying good morning to you, Nina.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, thank you. The format is that Nina will step us through the presentation that's been released this morning to ASX. After Nina's presentation, we'll then open up the floor to Q&A. If you'd like to ask a question, you can do so at any time. Just pop it into the Q&A function in the ribbon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get through as many questions as we can in the time that we have. For now, though, Nina, I'll pass across to you to get us on the road. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's a pleasure to present the Dimerix news to you today. My name is Dr. Nina Webster, and I am the CEO and Managing Director of Dimerix. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with Dimerix, we are an Australian publicly listed pharmaceutical company working to improve the lives of patients with kidney disease. As many of you will be familiar with, our lead clinical asset, DMX-200, is currently in a fully recruited global Phase 3 clinical trial as a treatment for focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, or FSGS, which is a rare type of kidney disease. During this webinar, I will walk you through how we are financed through to completion of ACTION3, walk through the non-dilutive loan facility agreement and funding position, as well as the exciting new addition to our pipeline, a drug we call DMX-652, and why we think it represents a genuine growth opportunity for the company, for shareholders, and for patients. As always, please note the presentation today does contain forward-looking statements that represent management's current views, and actual results may differ as a result of many factors, some of which are noted on this slide. Our lead clinical asset, DMX-200, is in a fully recruited Phase 3 trial known as ACTION3 as a treatment for FSGS, for which there are limited treatment options and for which we have orphan drug designation in US, Europe, UK, and Japan, as well as the potential for breakthrough designation in some other territories. Orphan disease means it's considered a rare disease. As such, global regulatory agencies provide incentives to develop products for these indications. These incentives include premium pricing, as well as guaranteed market exclusivity periods upon approval, during which patents cannot be challenged and generics cannot enter the market. DMX-200 is in what we consider a significantly reduced risk late-stage development program in FSGS patients. Reduced risk in that we have indicative technical and commercial validation. Technical validation in that Phase 3 is typically the last study before submitting for marketing approval. And being in a Phase 3 study means that 1, we've already demonstrated a well-tolerated safety profile. 2, we have already collected encouraging efficacy data across both the Phase 2 clinical trial as well as the first blinded interim analysis in our current Phase 3 clinical trial. And 3, more recently, we confirmed that the trial is statistically powered at greater than 90% to demonstrate a treatment effect for the proteinuria primary study endpoint, meaning that if DMX-200 reduces proteinuria in trial patients as anticipated, then there is a greater than 90% chance that the study will successfully show a statistically significant proteinuria treatment effect at the trial's conclusion. Commercially, we have validated our asset through not just 1, but 5 commercialization agreements that collectively may bring in up to 1.9 billion Australian dollars in upfront and potential milestone payments, plus royalties on net sales. Furthermore, we've already conducted commercial manufacturing scale-up activities with our manufacturing sites being in the United States. We, the team at Dimerix, are delighted to once again do exactly what we said we would do, delivering on our commercial goals, building a diverse pipeline that leverages both our core competencies and global infrastructure in kidney disease. At the end of the March 2026 quarter, Dimerix had just shy of $27 million in cash, noting that we anticipate releasing the June quarter update in due course. Collectively, with the approximate $24 million to be received from both the Everest Medicines license agreement upfront payment and the $10 million from the loan facility announced today, this puts us in a strong position to execute on our strategic goals. As announced today, we've taken steps to boost our balance sheet by securing a non-dilutive cash injection to take us through to completion of the ACTION3 Phase 3 trial in DMX-200, as well as initiation of the Phase 2 clinical trial in DMX-652. Collectively, the existing cash reserves, the upfront fee expected from Everest in the coming weeks of about $14 million, as well as the $10 million non-dilutive facility, puts us in a great position to execute on this very compelling opportunity in acute kidney injury with DMX-652, as well as prepare for potential commercial launch with DMX-200. Negotiations are also progressing well to access up to a further $40 million in non-dilutive funding, which are anticipated to be on substantially similar terms to the facility announced today. These funds would further extend cash runway beyond ACTION3 Phase 3 clinical trial in DMX-200, as well as support building a sustainable development pipeline of assets in rare kidney disease. Importantly, Dimerix remains confident that any drawn funds could be repaid from existing commercial licensee pre-data milestone payments, potential new license and fees, and/or capital market access. The loan agreement is with an entity called Skiptan, an associate of a substantial shareholder of the company. Under the loan agreement, Skiptan has agreed to advance $10 million to the company, providing a non-dilutive cash runway on terms that are being viewed as more favorable to the company than other loan facility proposals received by Dimerix. The drawn funds will accrue a 10% interest rate and can be repaid at any time prior to January 2028. And as I mentioned previously, could be repaid from existing licensee pre-data milestone payments, potential new licensing fees, and/or capital market access. Finally, only if DMX-200 ACTION3 Phase 3 study is successful and Dimerix actually receives success milestones from our commercial partners does the lender receive any upside reward, which is capped at 2 times the initial investment Dimerix drew down on. This is called the milestone participation, and it is restricted to 30% of any milestone Dimerix receives until that 2-time cap is reached. That means that the majority, 70% of funds, will be retained by Dimerix for our continued operations up until that 2 times cap is reached. This funding agreement delivers access to capital at a substantially lower cost of capital than other sources, with terms that are firmly aligned with company and shareholder interests. We retain control over when and how much capital is drawn, paying interest only on funds that are actually drawn. Today, we were delighted to announce the acquisition of a second kidney drug asset, DMX-652, which broadens our business into a new area of kidney disease. This is an asset that has so much potential and is just perfect for Dimerix. So why do we think that it's such an exciting opportunity for Dimerix? Firstly, DMX-652 is the perfect asset that we can build on. We're acquiring a Phase 2 ready compound with an open IND, an FDA-cleared drug that's already manufactured for a relatively small upfront. The originator, Mission Therapeutics, has undertaken significant and well-controlled preclinical and clinical studies, meaning the asset has significant early development risk already removed. Secondly, DMX-652 is aimed at one of the hottest targets in medicine right now. It is a first and best-in-class USP30 mitophagy inhibitor. What this means is that it targets the root cause of kidney injury, being both energy failure and inflammation, regardless of the injury trigger. Thirdly, DMX-652 can leverage our existing and established expertise and infrastructure. This is a genuinely complementary asset that sits perfectly alongside our Phase 3 asset, DMX-200, in FSGS rare kidney disease, and it utilizes both the in-house company skills and extensive global renal network that we have successfully built over the last decade. Fourthly, acute kidney injury is a real, validated, and growing market. There are no approved therapies for acute kidney injury, which represents a greater than $3.5 billion opportunity in 2026 and is expected to grow to north of $7.5 billion in the next decade. And finally, DMX-652 offers significant strategic value. Dimerix has considerable optionality over DMX-652, and acute kidney injury is really just the start. We have the ability to expand into other potential indications, such as sepsis AKI, mitochondrial renal disease, renal transplant, or even idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. With composition of matter IP out to 2041, additional patent applications filed, and the potential for market exclusivity on approval, that gives us the time to explore additional indications beyond our initial target. Essentially, we have great flexibility with our ownership of this new asset. In summary, DMX-652 presents Dimerix and our stakeholders an incredibly strong opportunity in an unmet new market with a lot of the early development risk already removed. And thanks to the strategic overlap with our existing expertise in running clinical development programs in kidney disease globally, Dimerix is well positioned as a company to efficiently and effectively progress this model through the clinic and towards real-world use. So introducing DMX-652. As I said before, DMX-652 is a first-in-class, best-in-class, oral, once-a-day capsule with our first indication designed to prevent kidney injury in high-risk patients undergoing heart surgery. A few simple things to note here. Firstly, it's a small molecule capsule taken once a day, which is convenient and relatively low cost to manufacture, particularly when compared to biologics or injectable medicines. And it's intended as a preventative therapy. DMX-652 is administered around the time of surgery, aiming to stop the damage before it happens, and is continued for approximately 1 month post-surgery. The drug has already been manufactured to pharmaceutical grade and is available for the Phase 2 clinical trial initiation as part of our acquisition. So what is AKI and what's the problem that we're solving? When somebody has major heart surgery, their blood is often rerouted through a bypass machine. That is both life-saving and essential to conduct cardiac surgery, but it can briefly starve the kidneys of oxygen. Now, the kidneys are surprisingly oxygen-hungry organs. After the heart, they burn more energy than almost anywhere else in the body. Every cell of the body contains mitochondria, the tiny power plants that provide all the energy for the cell. You can think of them as the cell's batteries. Kidney cells are packed with mitochondria because they need so much energy to continually filter the blood. So this disease follows the 3 steps on the screen. Step 1, the surgery interrupts the oxygen supply. Step 2, starved of oxygen, known as ischemia, the mitochondria are damaged. Step 3, when blood flow is restored, known as reperfusion, the sudden rush actually triggers a flood of harmful molecules called reactive oxygen species that further damages the mitochondria, causing them to rupture, building up damage whereby the cells start to die. Within hours, kidney function drops dramatically. This sudden drop in kidney function is what doctors call acute kidney injury, or AKI, and it matters enormously. It means higher death rates, longer stays in intensive care, more patients ending up on dialysis, and for many survivors, permanent kidney damage down the track. How common is it? Well, surprisingly, roughly 1 in 4 heart surgery patients suffer some kind of kidney injury. And in the highest risk patients, that climbs to somewhere between 1/3 and 1/2. Today, there are no approved medicines to prevent this. Surgeons can only stand back and hope, and that is the gap that DMX-652 is designed to fill. So how does DMX-652 actually work to reduce the risk of acute kidney injury? In a healthy person, looking on the left-hand side, your cells already have a built-in mechanism to deal with the occasional stresses and damage to mitochondria. When damaged, the cell would normally tag the mitochondria with a ubiquitin or UB marker that we can think of as a tag that says, "Eat me." Once tagged, the cell's recycling system carries it away and recycles the contents of the mitochondria. We call this process mitophagy. Now, there are several control processes for this system to ensure that it is well regulated and mitochondria are only recycled when needed. A key part of this process is an enzyme with the name USP30. Its job is to act like a handbrake on that recycling process. In a healthy cell, that handbrake is really useful. It prevents the eat me stickers when they're not needed. So the cell doesn't throw away mitochondria that are actually still working. But here's the problem after cardiac surgery, looking in the middle of this slide. That handbrake stays locked on when it shouldn't. It keeps preventing the eat me tags attaching to the damaged mitochondria, so the cell cannot properly dispose of those damaged mitochondria. As a result of the ischemia and reperfusion, the damaged mitochondria pile up inside the cell, causing inflammation and cell death. That is acute kidney injury. Looking on the right-hand side, what DMX-652 does is simple. It releases the handbrake. By precisely switching off that USP30 enzyme, the eat me stickers stay put on the damaged mitochondria and the cell is able to quickly remove those damaged mitochondria. The healthy ones are left completely alone. And that last point is important. It's the real advantage of this novel approach. DMX-652 is specific and only ramps up cleanup where there's actual damage. If we can preserve those mitochondria and remove the damaged mitochondria, we can preserve the kidney function. What we're aiming for as an outcome is exactly what patients and hospitals want. Less severe kidney injury, fewer patients needing dialysis, shorter stays in intensive care, a lower chance of long-term kidney disease afterwards, and ultimately reduce cell death. The preclinical evidence for DMX-652 is very encouraging, with benefits observed across multiple preclinical models of acute kidney injury. This slide highlights two examples. On the far left is the ischemia reperfusion injury model. This preclinical model restricts blood flow to the kidney and then restores it, mirroring the type of injury that can occur during cardiac surgery. In this setting, DMX-652 significantly reduced damage to the energy-intensive kidney tubules when blood flow was limited. Second, in the middle of this slide, is the unilateral uteral obstruction model. This preclinical model creates an acute kidney injury that leads to inflammation and fibrosis, which are key drivers of later chronic kidney disease. In this model, DMX-652 significantly reduced fibrosis or scarring, suggesting a role in limiting longer-term kidney damage. Together, these data suggest that DMX-652 may reduce the initial kidney damage associated with cardiac surgery and may also limit progression towards chronic kidney disease. DMX-652 has already completed phase 1 clinical trials in 85 healthy volunteers, and the results are very encouraging. On safety, there were no serious side effects seen. There was no QT/QTc prolongation, which means no concerning changes in heart rhythm, which was one of the first things regulators will look for. DMX-652 was well tolerated, even in the older patient cohort, who are one of the higher risk groups for heart surgery. And there is a wide safety margin, meaning a comfortable gap between an effective dose and a higher level that could cause concern. On the practical side, the drug was absorbed quickly as a capsule, could be taken with or without food, and the pharmacokinetic profile supports that once-a-day dosing, which is incredibly convenient for patients. DMX-652 also has a clean profile when it comes to interacting with other medicines, which matters a great deal for surgery patients who are often on several drugs at once. Using this data, the Dimerix team have modeled and selected the dose intended for the phase 2 trial. As such, we go into the phase 2 clinical trial with the dose well justified with the regulators. This slide lays out the proposed phase 2 clinical trial that we are preparing to run. We intend on enrolling 160 high-risk patients in roughly 25 sites across US, Europe, and Australia in a gold standard double-blind trial of DMX-652 versus placebo. This means half the patients receive DMX-652 and the other half receive placebo. Patients take the drug for 28 days from just before their surgery, and we follow them for 90 days. The endpoints of the study are the acute kidney injury incidence at 7 days post-surgery, as well as the MAKE 90 and MAKE 30 and MAKE 90 endpoints. MAKE 30 and MAKE 90 refer to, and it's an acronym, major adverse kidney events occurring at 30 or 90 days, which can include death, dialysis, or persistent kidney dysfunction. Quite simply, we want to know if fewer patients develop kidney injury in the first few days after surgery. Alongside that, we'll track safety, biomarkers, and some broader measures of serious kidney problems out to 30 and 90 days. Importantly, both MAKE 30 and MAKE 90 are recognised approvable endpoints for the pivotal Phase 3 trial, along with the incidence of acute kidney injury. This is a clean, focused trial that will give us a great understanding of how the drug is performing before heading into a late-stage pivotal Phase 3 trial. And I will come on to timelines in just a moment. So why do we believe DMX-652 can be not just first, but best in class? And that's for 4 quick reasons. Firstly, DMX-652 is the only drug of its kind in clinical development for this condition, a USP30 inhibitor focusing on mitophagy. Secondly, DMX-652 is targeted. It boosts cleanup only where there is genuine damage, and we would expect to translate that into better safety profile than other approaches that may switch everything off everywhere and all at once. Thirdly, DMX-652 targets a common root cause of kidney damage. The damaged mitochondria are a problem no matter what actually triggered the kidney injury, making the mechanism of action broad and potentially complementary to existing care. Finally, DMX-652 indication has potential room to grow. The same mechanism opens the door to treating other kidney injury patients later, potentially expanding the market well beyond cardiac surgery. Acute kidney injury is an attractive space to be developing a novel drug. Why is this? When kidney injury occurs after heart surgery, there is absolutely nothing to prevent it or treat it. The consequences are both severe and expensive, leading to longer stays in intensive care, more patients on dialysis, higher death rates both in short and long term, and a sharp rise in the risk of permanent kidney failure. In fact, 1 in 4 cardiac surgery patients develop AKI after on-pump surgery, which is already a significant proportion, and this rate increases to 30 to 50% in those patients with pre-existing risk factors such as diabetes, low cardiac function, prior kidney disease, and age. This need for an urgent treatment is not just our opinion. A 2024 consensus of leading kidney and surgery experts described this complication as predictable, frequent, and devastating, and called effective preventative therapies a critical unmet need. When the world's specialists are openly asking for exactly the kind of treatment DMX-652 could offer, that is a strong signal, both for patients and the commercial opportunity. So what is the market opportunity? Across the major markets of the US, Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the UK, the total number of all cardiac surgery patients is approximately 811,000 patients per year. Narrowing down to those surgeries that are pre-planned leaves around 649,000 as the potential addressable market for DMX-652. Then we focus on the higher risk group, the patients most likely to suffer kidney injury and the target for the proposed Phase 2 clinical trial, which leaves approximately 260,000 patients each year in these major markets who could benefit from a drug such as DMX-652. The market is compelling, and that's even before you add the potentially large markets such as China and Japan, and also before expanding into other causes of kidney injury where the very same mechanism of action could apply. Zooming out to the bigger picture, the global market for acute kidney injury treatments is estimated to be worth $3.5 billion today, and it's forecast to grow to over $7 billion in the next decade. It is a large, growing market with essentially no direct competition in our niche focused. While there's nothing on market for AKI at this time, and thus no pricing reference, DMX-652 has the potential for orphan drug designation and/or breakthrough designation, and thus may attract a premium pricing opportunity. This slide maps out the other clinical programs being developed in kidney injury. I won't go through each drug candidate, however, the key point is that DMX-652 is the only mitophagy modulator in clinical development. Each of these other drug candidates work on a different part of the problem, and many are earlier in development. Because DMX-652 works on that fundamental downstream cause of mitophagy, it isn't really competing head-to-head with most of these. And in fact, in many cases, it could potentially be used alongside them, adding the collective benefit. So let's talk about the intellectual property surrounding DMX-652. As part of the acquisition, we have acquired the core composition of matter patent, the one that covers the compound itself. Dimerix now owns this patent outright. It has been filed in 19 territories, including US, Europe, Japan, and China, with some initial territories granted, including the Notice of Allowance in the US. And this provides anticipated protection through to 2041. In addition, we've secured exclusive rights to the existing broad background patents, which, whilst not specific to DMX-652, provides us the freedom to operate in the field. Furthermore, given DMX-652 is what is known as a new chemical entity, meaning a novel drug candidate, it may be eligible for guaranteed exclusivity periods of at least 5 years, which may be extended to 7 or 10 years with successful orphan drug designation in key territories, given AKI associated with cardiac surgery may be considered an orphan indication. In summary, DMX-652 has strong and long-dated protection on multiple fronts. As announced this morning, Dimerix is acquiring DMX-652 from UK-based Mission Therapeutics, a company that has focused on development of USP30 inhibitors. Mission have done a fantastic job of developing DMX-652 through preclinical, the phase 1 study, and manufacturing activities, removing much of that early development risk. The asset has been successful at all points of development to date, with Mission Therapeutics now choosing to focus on their CNS candidate. This is why we are so excited by this opportunity. Not only is the asset demonstrating strong development potential, but we can bring our strong global kidney disease infrastructure and expertise into developing the exciting new and promising candidate DMX-652 towards commercialization. Importantly, Dimerix has sole ownership and control of the development plan. In return, Dimerix has negotiated attractive de-risking terms, starting with a relatively small upfront acquisition payment to Mission Therapeutics of $5 million US, a further up to $47 million in deferred acquisition payments are contingent on the success of predefined clinical development milestones, meaning they're only payable when such milestone is successfully met. The remainder of the payments are all post-marketing approval, along with royalties on potential net sales. As such, the acquisition is heavily weighted to mutually beneficial success-based milestones. In the event Dimerix elects not to proceed with development, Mission has the first right to negotiate for return of those assets. Looking at our 2 pipeline assets, you can see the real strong strategic fit, which is a big part of the value proposition of Dimerix as we grow into a multi-asset drug development company. On the left, DMX-200 is our established program, currently in a fully recruited phase 3 trial for FSGS in a rare type of kidney disease, with phase 3 results expected in the first half of 2028, and with 5 commercial partners already secured across key territories. On the right, DMX-652 is our new program, ready to start a phase 2 clinical trial in a potentially rare type of kidney disease, with trial initiation planned for the second half of 2026 and the first patient anticipated in early 2027. The complementary growth pillars share the same kidney expertise, the same regulatory clinical machinery, the same know-how in making and developing these kinds of molecules. So the pipeline addition really adds a whole new opportunity, leveraging from our existing infrastructure and expert team. Aside from those discussions underway for additional sources of capital, potentially from lenders as previously disclosed, The 5 commercial license agreements in place for DMX-200 and the potential for further licensing agreements in available territories, Dimerix has the potential for further upfront and/or milestone payments to come in. For investors, what we are delivering is a disciplined, stage-gated capital deployment focused on the clinical value inflection. With DMX-200 in a fully recruited, pivotal phase 3 trial and seeing the first patients complete not just the ACTION3 study period, but also the open label extension study in the middle of this year, we're excited to offer eligible patients who perceive benefit on DMX-200 the opportunity to continue access to the drug. Of course, overlaid across this is the potential for further licensing deals in territories that remain unlicensed and could bring in further non-dilutive capital. In parallel, DMX-652 brings a clear sequence of potential value inflection points from completing the acquisition, initiating the trial, dosing the first patient, the first interim analysis planned in 2027, and then the top-line results, each a natural checkpoint. With 2 clinically differentiated assets in renal disease, addressing 2 separate high unmet need indications with independent timelines, we are building a steady cadence of value-creating milestones. So to pull the threads together on DMX-652, this is a phase 2 ready asset that already carries real intrinsic value. The hardest early questions, is it safe in people? Is it well protective? Had largely been answered before we acquired it, significantly reducing execution risk. With strong preclinical efficacy signals, encouraging phase 1 data, and pharmaceutical grade product ready to go, we are thrilled to have the opportunity to take over DMX-652 development in an indication with a high unmet need that really leverages our existing renal, regulatory, clinical, and small molecule capabilities. Add to that the compelling patent position and endorsement from leading acute kidney injury experts, DMX-652 is shaping up to be a significant opportunity for shareholders and patients alike. Stepping back to the whole company as a whole, our strategy is straightforward. Firstly, we expect to continue driving ACTION3 forward through to traditional approval, working with the regulatory agencies across all territories around the world to see DMX-200 in the hands of as many FSGS patients as possible. Secondly, we expect to expand our commercial partnerships in 2 ways, with existing partnerships into new indications beyond FSGS, particularly through our US partner, who has an obligation to expand DMX-200 label into additional indications, and for which Dimerix would be eligible for royalties and milestones. And with new partnerships in territories not currently licensed, bringing in further potential upfront and milestone payments, as well as royalties. And thirdly, on the right-hand side, Dimerix looks to advance the development pipeline by adding DMX-652 phase 2 clinical trial in acute kidney injury, as well as identifying and assessing new assets, potentially in rare or renal disease, which we look forward to announcing to market in due course. Ultimately, the ACTION3 Phase 3 trial in FSGS, as well as our newly acquired Phase 2 asset in acute kidney injury, underlines our strategy to grow sustainable shareholder value through clinical success, global partnerships, and pipeline diversification. Dimerix is a company focused on kidney disease, and it's already proven it can take a drug candidate through late-stage trials and attract multiple commercial partners across key territories. We have now added a second, clearly differentiated drug candidate, DMX-652, that targets a common, serious, and completely unrelated complication of heart surgery in a large and growing market protected by strong patents and with a clear run of milestones ahead. We believe Dimerix is well positioned to deliver against its strategic plan, and we look forward to updating the market in due course as we progress this new and exciting potential therapy through the clinic and towards real-world use. Thank you very much for your time, and I would now like to invite questions.
Thank you, Nina. Good to invite questions. I will mention that there's an awful lot that have come through the Q&A, and we've got a lot of people online. So thank you, everyone, for jumping on at such short notice. And they're across the various categories of questions. So I'll do my best to wrap some of them up. where I see some commonality between them. But let's start here because I think this is a really good one. So, was DMX-652 an opportunity that arose unforeseen or something that has been planned for some time?
Yeah, great question, Jane. We have actually had a very active program as we had announced to market over the last probably 12 months with the intention to look at building our pipeline. We've screened over 140 potential available assets through a formal screening process for the qualities that matched our strategic requirements, which included being a match for our clinical and medical expertise, being ready for the clinic, coming with a strong safety data profile. So we conducted extensive due diligence on the mission asset, and the more we dug into the work that we'd done with during the previous development, and the more we understood how powerful mitophagy could be for a range of diseases, the more excited we became.
Thank you. We'll have some more questions along that line shortly, but there are a few here on DMX-700, which of course is in the pipeline as well. So main question is, what does this mean for the progression of DMX-700?
Yeah, so as investors may recall, we put DMX-700 on hold in 2022, pending the focus on DMX-200. DMX-700 originally looking at a broader indication that was not renal or rare. And so that's not to say we won't look at it in the future, but right now we very much want to capitalize and leverage our existing infrastructure, the global network that we've built up in rare renal disease. Hence, DMX-652 is a fantastic fit for us to be the next key candidate that we develop in the clinic.
Thank you. Related question, is Dimerix still in negotiations with any additional partners?
So Dimerix is, of course, in discussions with partners for available territories, potential partners in available territories. That continues. These licensing deals close when they close, so I can't give you any further guidance on that, other than to say the intention of the company, which has always been, is to get this into the hands, DMX-200 into the hands of as many FSGS patients as we can. So to that extent, we will be in discussions with all available territories until we reach that goal.
Thank you. Okay. Got a couple of clever questions here from an analyst who's been doing her homework this morning, I can see. So we can see Mission Therapeutics investors include specialist biotech funds and pharma, for example, Pfizer Ventures, Roche Ventures, Sofinova. How did you find DMX-652? Why did Mission decide to out-license as opposed to progress themselves? As we can see, they had the IND approval for the phase 2 study since March 2024. I think that's been updated to 23. Why the wait?
Yeah, so again, really good question. So we ran that formal process where we went out and scoured all corners of the earth looking for an asset that very much fit the criteria and that we were very excited about. Mission Therapeutics is the world leader in DUB enzymes, drug delivery and discovery and development. So they have essentially developed a class of drugs in the clinic and are very much focused on their CNS-focused drug, MTX-325, into Parkinson's disease, and therefore did not have the in-house capability or experience in renal disease. This is why it's such a nice fit with Dimerix, because we bring our skills and capability to the renal disease, so it leaves Mission to focus on their CNS Parkinson's disease.
Thank you. Good question here. Have our commercial partners expressed interest and support in this acquisition?
So the partners will learn about this acquisition this morning, the same as every other investor. But ultimately, we have partners who at any point in time could be very much interested in future pipeline that we have. And could very well be partners of preference. That's assuming that we would want to license the asset. Our intention right now is to take this all the way through to phase 3 and then look at the marketing opportunity for Dimerix as well.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask one more question on 652. There's a heap more in the raft here, but also some on funding. So I might loop back around to funding and then we'll come back through. So congratulations, very complimentary to DMX-200. You mentioned potential orphan drug designation for DMX-652. Where would that fall in the timeline? And is that something you are likely to pursue?
So that is a discussion that we would have with the regulators in all of those territories that you can seek orphan drug designation, which would include US, Europe, UK, Japan, for example, but also that breakthrough designation that I mentioned during the presentation today, which can give the same sort of benefits as an orphan drug designation as well. So yes, that is very much a discussion that we will have with those regulators as we progress through phase 2 clinical trial.
Okay, let's get into some questions on funding. What are pre-data milestone payments, and can you give any info on the quantum of these milestone payments? I know this question was asked early in the piece and you've gone on to talk about it a bit more, but perhaps just go over it again if you can.
Yeah, absolutely. So the pre-data milestones basically means milestones that are payable before the ACTION3 Phase 3 readout, of which Dimerix could be eligible. Those breakdown of development milestones have not been made public. That is strategic. We are in negotiations with other territories for DMX-200. So we have not broken down what they are and when they come in. However, to that very point, we have the opportunity to fund through those pre-milestones as well as potential new licensees as well.
Thank you. Okay, if the loan is due on 17th of January 28, how does Dimerix expect to pay back this loan with no revenue stream? What milestone payments, if any, are payable before the ACTION3 readout post-March 2028?
Yeah, so I think this one's very much linked to the last question that we had, Jane. As we confirmed today, we are funded through the completion of the ACTION3 Phase 3 trial. Repayment of any funds drawn from the loan structure could be from existing licensee pre-data milestone payments, as well as potential new license fees or capital market access.
Thank you. Okay. Does the loan funding mean Dimerix may end up paying up to 20 million if we have drawn 10 million? Also, is the milestone participation limited to the period until Dimerix repays the withdrawn funds and terminates the loan agreement?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first question?
Sure. Does the loan funding mean Dimerix may end up paying up to 20 million if we have drawn 10 million?
So the initial seed money, the 10 million, if drawn down, is repayable at a 10% interest rate. Then separate from that, that is the only obligation at this point. Separate from that is if we have a successful ACTION3 Phase 3 clinical trial, and we receive milestone payments from our existing licensees, then we will pay up to 2 times the initial seed money to the investor as the upside reward for having put the money down in the first place. So that is the only upside reward they get, is only if ACTION3 is successful.
Okay. So the second part of the question was also, is the milestone participation limited to the period until Dimerix repays the withdrawn funds and terminates the loan agreement?
So the milestone participation would only be in play, one, if we have successful data and receive milestone payments from our existing licensees, and would only be payable until the 2 times cap was reached. Once that's reached, that falls away. I think it's also important to explain that, and I did mention during the talk today, that we only put out up to the 30% of what we receive from partners. We retain 70% of any of that income so that we maintain sustainability through that process as well.
Thank you. Okay. Is the 40 million additional non-dilutive funding possibly coming from the same supportive major shareholder?
No, is the short answer, but we are talking to other, typically US-based entities.
Okay, great. Thank you. Hi, Nina. The appendix notes that Dimerix can repay the loan principal at any time before January 28 to reduce the 10% compounding interest. Can you clarify if an early repayment of the principal and accrued interest completely terminates the lender's right, I think you've covered this, to the 30% milestone participation, or does that unsecured milestone obligation remain active until the 2 times cap is met, regardless of whether the loan itself has been paid back?
I'll take that question just to make sure we're clear.
Yeah.
And so we will only have to pay back the 10% interest on what we draw down. The milestone participation, if we are successful, is only 2 times whatever we drew down. So if we only drew down 5 million, for example, the 2x is only on the 5, not on 10.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Okay. Okay, I'm going through all the questions I can see in front of me. There may be another one or two hiding in there on funding. I'll try to get back to it, but let's get through some of these other ones. How do the current trial sites activated by Dimerix for FSGS help with speeding up recruitment in AKI?
Because of the global network that we've built up literally over the last decade with renal physicians globally, it means that we have a real opportunity to leverage the key experts we have in renal disease in each of those territories. So that certainly does speed up the process that we will go through.
Thank you. Okay. It seems that both DMX-200 and DMX-652 have some commonality that they address the scarring. If then, can these therapies create some synergy in terms of getting to the market?
It's a really interesting question, Jane, because you've got on the one hand, DMX-652 is a preventative. The intention is these patients take it prior to surgery, up to a month. And that will then prevent the kidney injury in the first place. But ironically, to your point or to the question, we then have a product that could actually then treat any resulting scarring that did occur in these patients as well.
Great, thank you. Hi, Nina. Congratulations on the acquisition. Exciting. Could you please advise on potential recruitment rate for AKA trial versus that seen in FSGS? I think it should be faster. Also, we have seen trials in the past focused on high-risk patients with underlying kidney disease in CSAKI. Could you talk about the rationale for broadening it to include their other high-risk patients in the phase 2 for DMX-652? Thanks.
Sorry, can you just say the first question again? Because that second one was very long.
Yeah. Could you please advise on potential recruitment rate for AKA trial versus that seen in FSGS? I think it should be faster.
Yes, absolutely. And so this is an indication that we should be able to recruit far faster. We only require that we estimate the 25 sites for 160 patients. And so we expect first patient in early 2027 based on the opening up of sites and the initiation activities on the back half of 2026.
Great. Nina, you've said you're funded for this new phase 2 trial. So what is the anticipated cost of running this new phase 2 trial?
Yeah, so we don't deliberately don't forecast into the future on cost spend because things do adjust as we go. However, we are funded for the ACTION3 completion, but also the initiation activities of the DMX-652. So aside from the initial upfront payment, initial costs on DMX-652 are expected to be minimal as we prepare and set up for that phase 2 clinical trial. And furthermore, cash burn on ACTION3 is expected to reduce over time as patients complete the study.
Thank you. Okay, I've just received a reminder. I actually missed the second question from that prior one, so let's go back there. So this was on 652. Also, we've seen trials in the past focused on high-risk patients with underlying kidney disease in CSAKI. Could you talk about the rationale for broadening it into include other high-risk patients in the phase 2 for DMX-652?
Yeah, so I think as we talked about in the presentation, we will be including patients at high risk, including those that do have or have had prior kidney disease. And that is a real opportunity for us. Essentially, with these patients where we have that mitophagy process, that is going to be a really compelling opportunity for us to go into those areas. So whilst we're looking at high risk patients at the moment for the phase 2 clinical trial, including those with existing kidney disease, there is an opportunity to expand into other patients in cardiac surgery as well as other indications.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just heading back to one on funding that I missed earlier. Hi, Nina. While the baseline interest rate is 10%, adding a 2 times milestone participation cap dramatically shifts the effective cost of capital. Depending on the timing of our DMX-200 partner payouts, the true annualized IRR of this debt could easily range from 64% to well over 115%. Given that this behaves more like a high-cost venture royalty structure in a success scenario, Did the board model the effective IRR across these milestones? And how does that true cost compare to the alternative non-dilutive options you've evaluated?
Yes, so absolutely, this was modelled against a number of different options. And as I mentioned during the presentation today, a number of different other proposals that we had received as well. This funding agreement delivers access to capital at a substantially lower cost of capital versus other sources. It is a process that we did have advisors, independent external advisors assess, as well as auditors assess, and this was the most appropriate terms that are aligned with company and shareholder interests.
Thank you. And thanks for remembering all of that question because it was quite a long one. Okay. Do all types of cardiac surgeries expose patients to AKI risk? Are all such patients at the risk of AKI risk, or are there a subset of patients prone to this risk?
Yeah, so the AKI that we've been talking about today is what we call patients in cardiac surgery on pump. So when they're putting on a bypass machine, that is essentially where we trigger that ischemia and then the reperfusion that I spoke about today. So that is the focus that we're looking at the moment. But to your point, or to the question, ultimately, this is an area that we really could expand into multiple other indications, particularly with that mitophagy process.
Thank you. I do think you've just actually answered this, but there's a cash burn aspect here that you might want to just look at quickly. So how much will DMX-652 phase 2 study cost, and what do you expect cash burn to step up to?
Yeah, so that's very, very similar to the question that we had previously. So aside from the initial upfront, I mentioned before, initial costs on DMX-652 are expected to be minimal as we prepare for that phase 2 clinical trial setup. And then the cash burn on ACTION3 itself is expected to reduce over time as patients complete the study and sites close down.
Thank you. Are there any milestone payments from the 5 licensing partners prior to the post-March 2028 DMX-200 ACTION3 readout?
So there are development milestones. We haven't given a breakdown of when the milestones are payable, but we have made it clear there are pre-data milestones as well as post-data milestones.
Okay, great. A reminder, we're getting pretty close to time. If you have a burning question you'd like to ask, please pop it into the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll get through another one or two now, and then we'll let everyone off the line. So reminder, please, on which territories remain unlicensed for DMX-200.
Oh, good question. So unlicensed territories at the moment would be South America, Latin America, the CIS territories, which includes the Russian territories. We have India and many of the territories through those Asian areas, as well as Africa, where actually there is a higher incidence of FSGS in Black men as well.
Okay, thank you. There are a couple here just on cost of DMX-652 and who you acquired it from. I'll just mention, I think they came through before we got to that point in the presentation, so please refer to the presentation for all of the detail. There's heaps there, also in the announcements that were released earlier today. So I would just add the last one is where do you see this now fitting into your overarching pipeline build?
Oh, this is a very strategic, strong strategic fit for us. As I've mentioned before, in renal disease, the key in-house expertise we have in clinical, regulatory, manufacturing, small molecules, then the global infrastructure that we have, key opinion leaders in all of these countries that we've been working with. So is a very, very strong fit for us to build that very sustainable pipeline in kidney diseases as an expertise area for us. So this is very exciting. I did mention earlier, we do continue to look at other assets. That's not to say we're rushing into anything. There is no plan to rush into anything, but we will be building ultimately a sustainable pipeline of products in kidney disease for Dimerix.
Right. And a final one that I will throw in, Nina, and then perhaps I'll hand back to you for closing comments. A regular question that people like to know when you bring a new asset into the pipeline is what can we expect in terms of news flow and what might this, what do we need to know about what might happen next? So perhaps a minute on that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you would note in the slide deck, we do have a slide on that news flow as well. We will have strong, regular news flow, particularly from that DMX-652 program over the next several years, including key regulatory, key clinical milestones as we progress, we prepare for and then progress through that phase 2 clinical program. Near-term milestones will include receipt of the materials, receipt of the patent rights, the medical advisory board meetings, regulatory submissions, ethics approvals, and of course, that very important initiation of patient dosing.
Great. Okay. Well, with that, we're just about at time. So perhaps I can hand back to you for any closing comments.
Thank you, Jane. And thank you again for your time today. I know we've taken a little longer than usual. I hope you are as delighted as we are in today's news. And I am genuinely excited about our future as we progress both our ACTION3 Phase 3 clinical trial in FSGS, as well as our newly acquired asset in acute kidney injury and building upon our growth strategy. We appreciate all our shareholder support and your patience. We look forward to updating the market as we progress our development programs and our partnering activities. That concludes today's call, and thank you for listening.
Excellent. Thank you. I'll add my thanks to everyone as well, particularly for jumping on at short notice. With that, we'll invite you all to disconnect. Have a great day. Thanks.